please don't be nervous. Rob Brown's got a long pole with a hook on it, and if I go on too long, he's going to yank me right off this podium. About 8 years ago, I delivered a eulogy for Wes Forcier, who was a very close friend of mine, and Herb. And later that day, Herb came up to me and said, "Ken, if you're around after me, I want you to say a few words." So at the time, Herb was getting up at 6 a.m., opening the bagel shop and sailing all over Narragansett Bay, while I was confronting a rather serious health challenge. So I doubted the wisdom, but anyway, I agreed, and here I am. He asked me at that time how many eulogies I had delivered, and there've been a few more since Wes, so the total is 33 eulogies for family and friends. In fact, it's reached a point when I return to Rhode Island or Connecticut, people go into hiding. I've been doing a lot of thinking about Herb and my Edgewood friends this week, and I keep going back to 1949. I was a freshman at Providence College, and it's the first time I met St. Thomas Aquinas. He was one of the great theologians of the Catholic Church, and I was thankful there was approximately 1,200 years between us, because St. Thomas and I had some serious disagreements. For instance, and I paraphrase now, St. Thomas described love as wishing good things for another person. Now you have to remember, I was 18 and the hormones were running wild, but that wasn't love to me. Love was walk on the beaches and holding hands and maybe a little kiss. It was dropping your date off at 10 o'clock and calling her at 10:30 to make sure she hadn't met anyone. It was plotting and planning events, 99% of them which never happened. But certainly love was a lot more than just wishing good things for another person. I think I kept my shallow definition of love much longer than I should have, which may explain why I've lived alone for about 30 years. I don't think I really got the real meaning until Chris was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I watched as Herb sat there, and there were times when Chris couldn't remember the names of her children and grandchildren, and instead of raising his fist against heaven, Herb always followed that old Abe Lincoln message: "It hurts too much to laugh, but I'm much too old to cry." Love is when you're told that your wife has an incurable disease that nobody can do anything about. And I watched her swing into action. He wasn't great on research on the computer, I was. We found everything. And I never quite shared it with her, but it didn't sound to me like there was anything. But then we found out about a program at Butler Hospital, and Herb started taking her for injections. And when there was no improvement, he reasoned maybe she was getting the placebo, and he went on for another year. And the injections had to be painful. It was a long needle into the brain. And finally, after it was all over, Herb said to me, "I'm sorry I put Chris through it. It did nothing." And I said, "Herb, don't say that. It did a lot. It showed Chris how much you loved her. And it taught shallow people like me the real meaning of love." I was involved in their love story right from the beginning. I was there before Chris. I remember in 1955, I'd just gotten out of the Air Force. Tom Burson had just gotten out of the Navy. Herb and Wes Forcier were out of the Army. And we did a lot together. a couple of years ago, I had lunch with Brad Boss, who's here with us today, one of the original Edgewood boys. And Brad and I were talking about how Herb never lacked for female companionship. Oh my, he had, the girls liked Herb. Meanwhile, I still remember inviting a lady to my junior prom at LaSalle Academy, and she turned me down because she wouldn't be able to wear her heels. Bear with me. The average length of Herb's relationships was about 6 weeks. The first 2 weeks he couldn't live without her. The next 2 weeks she talked too much, and the final 2 weeks they didn't hate the same people, so it would end. Then I remembered meeting Chris for the first time, and she was beautiful, kind, empathetic. She was wonderful. And I let Herb know my feeling. And then maybe a few months later, we didn't see much of Herb. They spent a lot of time together. Herb called me one night. He wanted to see me right away. So I did. So he said, Ken, I want to marry Chris, but I have to sign this paper agreeing that I will raise the children Catholic. What would you do? And I said, well, Herb, I'm not a good example since I am Catholic. But I said, I will tell you one thing. If a lady like Chris Gosinski agreed to marry me, I wouldn't let religion stand in the way. And it wasn't more than a week later, he went to his beloved Edgewood Yacht Club, and in the parking lot, he gave Chris a ring. And I remember the night of the bachelor party, I was sitting with Tom Breslin and Wes Forcia, and Mr. Gorsinski, Chris's father, came in and went right to the table. And he sat with us for about an hour. And later I told Wes, I felt like I was on a job interview. He asked every question. Well, the day of the wedding, after the lovely reception, we went back to the Gorsinski house. And I was sitting with Tom Breslin in West Forcia, and Mr. Gorsinski walked over to us and sat with us, and he said, you know, I was very nervous about my daughter marrying her. They didn't know each other that long. But he said, I sat with you guys at the bachelor party, and I went home and told my wife that if Herb can have friends like these, he's right for our daughter. I think it was the greatest compliment I ever received. I think it was the last one. I think of my Edgewood friends. You know, I've lived all over the world, and I've made a lot of friends. I never made friends like I had from Edgewood. I wanted to name, and I made a list. I didn't want to forget anybody, but it was, we had Wes and Lauren Forcia, Tom Breslin, Bill Considine, Jack Swan, Gil Thorpe, Brad Boss, who's with us today, Joe Kinder, Bill Crofton, Peter Sheridan, Ken Sullivan, the McGinnis family, Peter Bowen, Bob Plant, Al Curtin, Bobby Vickers, Paul Warner, Jack Manning, Jerry Roque, and John Hamlin. Some left us much too soon. Eddie Ballard died at age 16. John and David Deneen died of cancer before the age of 30. And Ed McGinnis and Don White were killed in Korea. As I said, Brad Boss is with us today. Hey, Brad, stay healthy. I'm booked. Herb Browne was always there through good and bad times, before and after every illness, book signing, or play opening, always in the background offering quiet support, except on one occasion. Channing Gray, drama critic for the Providence Journal, and otherwise positive review, said there were too many set changes in my John Gordon play. Channing was right, and I revised the play. But first I had to stop Herb from heading down to the Journal and punching poor Channing in the mouth. And now for the first time in almost 80 years, I can't pick up the phone and call Herb. I can't tell you how sad that makes me feel. Our friendship reminds me of that old Bette Midler song. It must have been cold there in my shadow. You were content to let me shine. That's your way. You always walked a step behind. So I was the one with all the glory, while you were the one with all the strength. It might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I've got it here in my heart. Herb, I want you to know I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you were my hero? You're everything I wish I could be. I could fly higher than an eagle because you were the wind beneath my wings. Herb was a very proud Scotsman. But I'm still going to close with an old Irish toast. Herb, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall gentle in your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hands. Thank you.